I came here in April of 2021 as the interim police chief. I was still the police chief in Nissa, Oregon, where I served for 9 years as a police chief. I came over to help rebuild as a linebacker, they call it, from the Chiefs Association, to help shore up some things while they found a permanent chief. And that was my goal coming over. I did it with another agency prior to that. Helped the agency rebuild a little bit. They got a chief they hired and just helped stabilize some things due to the early retirement of Chief Wright. And so I came over to help do those things. So it's been here since April of 21. But I'll be honest, I don't remember the whole summer because I worked here for 3 days, flew on a plane or drove to Portland, flew to Boise. I talked with my hands, I'm sorry. My wife would pick me up and I would cover shifts in Nissa Thursday, Friday, and Saturday, 12-hour shifts. But it turned to a point where my wife, this is her dream to live over here. We were never going to leave Nissa. I have a counseling degree. I went and got my master's in Christian counseling through Liberty University. And that's what I was going to retire and do, that and teach college. I just wanted to get away from wearing a badge and a gun. And I was going to do that at 55. And then this happened. I'm really of faith as God blew doors off the hinges to get me over here. And my wife and I. This is her dream thing. So she was a librarian for the city of Nissa. We've been married for 37 years. We have 3 dogs. It's just, that's what we do. My dog thinks I'm awesome. So that's what's important here. But long story short, I came to help rebuild. We're sitting here. I'm coming back and forth. My wife came to visit. We travel here every year anyway to vacation. We used to live when I was in Salem. We vacation in Pacific City in 2012. So we're familiar with the area. I just never intended to come here like this. And it was a period of time over the 3 months I was the interim. So April, May, and June, they opened the job up and they asked me to apply. And so I applied and I already worked here for 2 months as the interim chief. And so for the whole application, there's all standards through the state you have to do. Psychology, all these things we did. The background was done and I accepted the job. There's not one contributing factor to this, and I'm going to qualify this with the things I've seen. So coming out of the pandemic, we had 2 years lockdown, shut down, wear the mask, all these things happened. It set back a generation of kids. I still see them walking on the street by themselves with a mask on. That's not the purpose of it. I understand the science behind inability to deal with people. But what happened and how it was put into place by our elected officials was poorly thought out. It was poorly thought out. I understand they were trying to save lives, but the ramifications that we're dealing with now, because you compound that with the passing of Measure 110. And I have a counselor, Measure 110 decriminalized Schedule 1 drugs. It talked about treatment options. I'm all about that because the prisons, I'll be honest with you, don't quote the stats on it. We have 14 prisons, 1 federal prison, and 33 county jails. There's 36 counties. You probably have roughly 17 to 20,000 people incarcerated in the state. We're doing it backwards.
Right.
There's a 750-bed mental hospital in Salem. That's it. And 3 out of 4 Oregonians who have mental health crises can't get into a bed. It's important that we train our officers, and myself included. So in Madison County, we have what's called CIT training, Crisis Intervention Training. It allows us to establish or show up on call. Is this medical, is this mental, or just behavioral? And it allowed us to break this down and try to get whatever we need to deal with the situation. Here's where it's gone backwards. Is now the officers are showing up, and we're doing work that we didn't do 29 years ago when I started. We're not social workers, but we're having to do that job, and I'll explain why. You do a property crime, as somebody deals with property crimes, you get put in prison. You go to prison, you become violent to survive the real criminals who are targeting you. Now you're right on the street, you may have some addiction issues, mentally ill, things like that, and you're skilled at violence. Social workers don't deal with this, they call us. We show up, how do you deal with it? I was shocked that Tillamook County does not have any CIT trained officers. Madison County, it took us 7 years to get everybody through this 40-hour class. We tried to set one up last year with 3 counties using Clatsop and what's the one north? It was Clatsop and Columbia County. We didn't get any buy-in, so we're looking at hosting it here this year in Tillamook County to put our officers, try to get our officers, deputies, troopers, and it's not just that, it's the dispatchers, it's prosecutors, it's mental health workers to go through this class and help teach it. And it's a 40-hour in-depth standardized class through Gobi. But I'll tell you, with Measure 110, they put $300 million aside for mental health and addiction recovery. $265 million last fall was still unspent because nobody had the infrastructure to spend the monies or hire people. Right? And this is the thing I talk about with people homeless. It's not made up of all criminals. It's not made up of all drug addicts. You have victims of circumstance, 1 paycheck away, they live on the street, and they're good people. Right? You have mentally ill and addiction people who want to help. They don't know how to get it. They don't cope. They have no coping mechanisms. That's an issue. You have a criminal element that comes in and preys upon those other two. Every female homeless person you see out there is raped repeatedly. They will not be victims. But I mean, George from St. Albans talked about opening his kitchen. I put him in a meeting with Peter from Cara, feeding one hot meal a day every day to the community. I just know the community because people are struggling. When I did the risk assessment with schools, I did not realize they all have food pantries. And every Friday I'd watch these kids load up their backpacks to take food home because they didn't have food at their house for the weekend. Yeah. Governor Kotek, when she said we need to address homelessness, mentally ill, and that, I've been preaching that for years. I've been preaching, thank you. This community, what I've really appreciated even on social media, is they rally around and support those less fortunate. I see comments all the time. A lady just yesterday posted on the Tillamook community page, I'm moving into an apartment, having no furniture, whatever. And people are thinking, hey, I got a chair for you, that's a couch for you. That's how you fix these things. People are rallying around and supporting. It's the difference between enabling and it's helping. Because a lot of people do have a little extra. And you look back, I'm not materialistic. We downsized a ton to move here. And I look at these things out. And that's why 3 days of Christmas, I worked the Christmas day and stuff. I drive around handing these out to people. And they're just like so pretty. And people crying. I'm like, I'm not ready to take it to be crying. Because you start crying, I'm crying, it's not good, I have a reputation, right? If you're in a position of public trust like a police officer, you should have the ability to help people. That's our job, it's not to arrest everybody. It's because it's easier, it's cheaper in society to do that, but it's become a role now because when the person that gets out of prison is violent, they're skilled at violence, and they're having a coping mechanism issue, normally they would just go to their counselor and social worker. No, they're too violent to deal with them, so they call us. So we're having to do these things, and people are at their wits' end. I mean, the protests, the marches, and all those things. I mean, they started to come. I met with the guy from that. He was doing all the things. I brokered peace in Ontario, Oregon. I sat down with him. He said, "I don't like cops," and we sit there and talked. And we agreed. This was a black male adult who's a convicted felon, and me, an old guy, and we sat in a coffee shop for 3 hours and agreed on a lot of concepts. He was blown away. He showed me videos of how he was mistreated, how officers would beat him. I mean, it was real.
Right.
And I said, that's not how you do it with people. Because I think with society as a whole, we devalue human life, but for some reason, it just happened, this click. Not us, but some people feel this, but they feel that's their only outlet. Once they get someone takes me people as I want, my life sucks. But I always said, instead of locking people up for drugs, I'm a big fan of decriminalizing. Don't get me wrong. Right. But what they did was backwards. They have a mechanism in place to deal with the influx of people who want to know. And treatment only comes to those that want it. Instead of sanctioning the drug use, find out why they're using it. Most people use illicit substances to escape reality because their life sucks. I'm just being honest. Why don't we focus on that? Socioeconomic factors. Why don't we focus on livability issues versus putting people in prison? I sit there talked to the Chief Justice of the entire state when I met with her, and I gave her the same spiel, and I said, the problem is the criminal justice system is broken. It's broken. There's a lot of smart people in this area that aren't involved in any type of political. There's smart people that live in these communities, very intelligent, but they're not being utilized because they want to have a purpose. So here's the thing: you have to have a list out. This is the things I need. You can't just say, "Oh, I need to just get rid of all this stuff going to prison." Well, how do you fix that? Well, I don't know. Well, who does reading to kids? Who does this? Who does this? People, if they don't know, they don't have a purpose, they're not going to volunteer. Right. But at the end of the day, if you bend your elected officials' ear and have, this is what you need. You elect them. We elect them to represent this body. And there's 90 of them now. I'm hoping to get honest and open dialogue and not pointing fingers, but solutions. It's what I say to the officers here. I don't want to solve all your problems. Bring me the problem and 2 solutions. That's my job as the chief, to figure out what fits our policy, procedures, livability issues, the community, and then I balance that and we implement it. But the employee who brings the solution, now they have ownership. So you as a community member, you say, here's a problem, here's a solution. How is that going to be achieved? I'll be honest, I invited the city manager, I invited members of Public Works, I invited our planning director to come to this meeting because these are livability issues in the entire community. And it may go outside of Tillamook, it may stay inside. But at the end of the day, if we don't have people there that can hear and listen, the first one we did was amazing. I'll tell you one of the most impactful out of the whole thing was the little Hispanic lady who said, we get treated, we get called all these names at Safeway. I don't know if you were at that meeting. And I'm like, here's my card with my number. You call the dispatch, and if an officer doesn't help you, call me. Because you should not go to Safeway and have your kids be yelled at by somebody of another. Because it's not about race, it's a human race. It doesn't about color of your skin. But she was treated differently than her kids by people of other color because she's Hispanic. I'm like, that is sad. This is 2022 then. And so out of that meeting, these are conversations we had. I'm not perfect. I am far from it. I'm a pro consumer. But at the end of the day, I care about people. I try. And we're not, we all make mistakes, but we're fallible people. And people think sometimes in our positions we're above this. But like, no, we have the same issues you do. They rename it. I don't care. It's called the Center for Policing Excellence or something. They keep renaming it. And when I was in Mount Airy County, I was there 9 years as a police chief for this. I took it over, 5th chief in 6 years. And this old deputy from California, he worked in Mount Airy County. After about a year, he goes, "I see what you're doing." I go, "Wait, you're doing some 90s policing and people love it because you're out in the community building relationships.
Yes.
You're having them part of the solution. That's what you're doing. You're educating the public and informing and having open and honest conversations. It's okay if we disagree. It's okay if you call me names. We can do that. At the end of the day, it's not personal." What I take personal is anytime we fail to do our job here. That's my fault. When it does well, the agency is a success. I give the credit to the officers. But when we don't do it right, I own that as the police chief. So when I met with the Democratic caucus, I said it's my fault as the police chief for not understanding there's a toolbox. The law enforcement specific on the DOJ hate crimes bias list. I didn't see that. And that's my fault. And they're like, "Well, no," I said, "No, I'm the police chief. I should have educated my officers." So if I didn't known that, I would have talked right to the director of DOJ Civil Rights, who's an amazing lady. He came out here and met with me. Amazing. The things that happened out of that horrible, horrible thing were amazing for the community. But I shared this with the community then. That when he started passing those flyers, that was in my neighborhood. And if my wife would have called him and said, "This is on our hood of our car," you don't want me. I said, I was like, "You don't want me to be the guy who finds him," because I was angry and I can't do that. I need to be impartial and unbiased. So we did this. We found him, did this obscure city ordinance, and then they wrote him the tickets. And then he had Nazi on his phone. He's screaming at my officers. And I went and found him after that. And he started to film. I said, "Sir, you need to go down." Stop. Hung it up. I said, "You're hurting people, brother. You're hurting people with your crowd, and you're being manipulated." He's just like, "Oh man." He felt horrible. I said, "But you need to leave town because I can't protect you. I can't protect you from the people that are very angry because you hurt them with these anti-Semitic flyers and stuff." That's a horrible thing to do. And I know he's manipulating. He knows what he's doing, but he's also mentally challenged. He is. And so we had that conversation. And last time I saw him, he was working at the fair, cleaning all that stuff off his van. But we had that honest talk. That's the piece I think most officers, they want to do that. They're afraid to do that. I'm already retired. I don't care. I'm being honest. I drink stronger coffee and a lot of feelings of people that want to yell at me. I'm okay with that. When people don't trust the police, when people don't feel they're going to be helped, well, you're not going to show up anyway to help me. That's a problem because you pay taxes to have a police department in the city of Tillamook, and our job is to respond and do the best we can. But understand, we're human beings. But it all starts at the top. That expectations set. I manage expectations means I set them, hold myself accountable, model them, and then I build relationships. And that's what I encourage the officers to do. Know people. Get out and talk to them. Instead of stopping cars and writing tickets, we have a traffic car, I guess his job. But at the end of the day, we talk to people.
Right. I
stopped a 7-year-old lady who 4 stop signs in front of me, almost T-boned me. I stopped her, saw her by the hospital. I said, "Man, what did I do? Stop sign out your life." She's like, "I've never been stopped in my life." "Well, yeah, I stopped by the chief, and you ran 4 stop signs and almost hit me." They look the same in Rockaway. She's like, "Oh my gosh, how many tickets do you want?" I tell her, and she's like, "Oh, I said, I'm not writing that 70-year-old lady to take her in front of stop signs, but you got his own stop signs, man." That's the goal. It's a safe environment to be open and honest. And if they're critical of something we did, I own that. Or I can explain my side of it. But the goal isn't to win an argument. It's to come up with an idea of how you think and I think, and how can we make it better? How can we do just a little bit better next time? Because at the end of the day, that's what it comes down to. But the livability of this community, everybody is the responsibility of the community. But it's easy to point the finger at government, the federal government, the state government, even the city or county. It's like, "Oh, no, I'm sorry. There's human beings making decisions, and we're all fallible, and they're making decisions based off who's in their ear, what advisor, right? What special interest group, what lobbyist." At the end of the day, I think they all want to do well. I don't think there's good and evil anymore. I'll be honest with you. I think there's people that are joyful and people that are suffering. And I'll be honest with you, no matter what community I've worked in, there's always the good old boy faction. And I always say, I'm the wall that dies against. I don't play good old boy. I don't care who you are. The city manager, Mr. George, is the same way. We treat everybody the same. And some people don't like that. They're like, "Well, I always did this before." On how many times I had a handshake agreement. That's not a contract. And it did it as a favor to you. That's not right because you don't get the same benefit they do. That doesn't work for me. Agencies are lowering their hiring standards to get applicants. And I'm like, you don't test as well, you don't background as well, you're bringing people with bad ethics, and these are the officers that are causing problems. You should never lower your height. Here's the standard. I don't care who you are, where you come from. Here's the standard. Here's the expectation. You should meet that. And I'll be honest, we go through our process here. It's a very in-depth process. It took us a year and a half to hire the last 2 officers because we had to find the people that fit and believed in the vision that we have. And the vision is service first, serving the community, be a part of the community. Anyway, he came from the Oregon State Police. Great officer. But I said, we're municipal police, and there's a difference in OSP writing tickets and building relationships. So I watched him on a call, and I'll give this example. It was a disturbance call with the neighbors, parking dispute. One guy said, I have a concealed carry permit. I mean, it was a bad call. So I sat and watched him spend 20 minutes with both sides, brought them together, had a solution. They all agreed, and we leave with no tickets. Nobody's arrested. And I said, you get it. He said, look, if I don't solve the problem now and bring them together, I leave. They're mad at each other still. Bad things happen to them. But what he did, he took that 20 minutes versus a 5 minute. I said, you get what we're doing here, sir. That's the difference. And so it comes down to your hiring, your background, and how you, it's not about having a type of mentality. It's about bringing the people in that want to make a difference. And so that's an example. 20 minutes, most officers will spend 5 minutes and written a ticket, but not here. In here, we spent the time. The neighbors loved it. Thank you for taking the time. That's what we're here for. We're here. We do conflict resolution. That's our job. And believe me, it's easier than writing a report. It's easier to take somebody to jail. I mean, that's what you should be doing. So we screen all this, we interview it, and we bring the best applicant off the scoring process. I had a lot of smart people, but I use a very, you can qualify it very well because it's a baseline scoring method. No matter if you and I are on the panel, I guarantee you within 5 points on this applicant, you and I both, and we have different thought processes because we're looking at these things. There's a baseline of how you score it. But then you bring in the right people. The right people that understand what we're trying to do. We're servants in the community. That's the piece. We have to be part of it. The neighbors have to know you. And you show up on a call, people say, hey, how you doing? How are you doing? And I'll be honest, I've done this in the past. These people, they act differently now. They're not as apt when they're having a bad day to continue to act a bad day when they see you and they know who you are.